Okay, hello everyone. Today we will discuss about business laws, and in business law, the most important act that is one of the oldest legislations, that is the Indian Contract Act 1872. Today we are going to discuss about the introduction part. Okay, what is a contract? So let's move on. Okay. The Indian Contract Act obviously speaks about a contract. Okay. So starts with a basic question: what is a contract? Okay. In general sense, we would have an idea that contract means it is between two parties. They are agreeing upon something to do, or from ascending from doing something. So in general sense, we can make it up. Okay, but let's look into the Bar Act. What does the Indian Contract Act says about a contract? How does it defines a contract? Okay. In section 2, subsection H, uh, it is defined as an agreement versus enforceable by law becomes a contract. So the definition for contract, as per the Indian Contract Act, states that an agreement which is enforceable by law becomes a contract. So we started with the question that what is a contract? The definition says an agreement which is enforceable by law becomes a contract. Okay. It now states about two things. First, it's an agreement. Second, there must be enforceability. Okay. Now comes the second question: what is an agreement? What is enforceability? Okay. We will once more go back to the Indian Contract Act. What does it tells about an agreement? Okay. Okay, in section 2, subsection E, the Contract Act defines what is an agreement. So it defines it in this way: every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. That is the definition given for an agreement. Every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. So in here, we can once more see two elements, that is promise and consideration. During the definition of contract, we have seen two elements, that is agreement and enforceability. And in the definition of agreement, we have went through two elements, that is promise and consideration. Okay. What is a promise? Now comes the second question. Right now it comes the third question, obviously. What is a promise? What is a consideration? Okay, I'll give you a simple example. Uh, Let us assume that you go to a shopkeeper and you tell him that I will give you 500 rupees. In return, you give me a calculator. I'll offer you 500 rupees, and in return, you give me a calculator. So the shopkeeper accepts it, and he receives 500 rupees from you, and he gives you a calculator. Now, first thing, you have made an offer, right? So you have made an offer that you will pay him a 500 rupee, and in return he should give you a calculator. So it is now accepted by the shopkeeper. He accepted that offer. He got the 500 rupees from you, and in return he gave you a calculator, right? So now you have made an offer, and the shopkeeper has accepted it. Okay. So promise. What is a promise? That is what we have been going through. An offer, when accepted, becomes a promise. In this shopkeeper example, you have made an offer and he has made an acceptance. Now it has become a promise. Okay, so what is an agreement? Every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. We have now learned what is a promise. An offer, when accepted, becomes a promise. Now comes the next question: what do you mean by consideration? Right? Okay, consideration in Latin terms, they used to say that as quid pro quo, which means something in return. Well, now stick back to that old example, that shopkeeper example. Okay, so you offered him 500 rupees and in return you got a calculator. Okay, so consideration is nothing but getting something in return. So you gave him 500 rupees, you offered him 500 rupees, and in return, you received a calculator. So, in your point of view, calculator is your consideration. And in shopkeeper's point of view, he offered you the calculator and in return he got 500 rupees. So his point of view, 500 rupees is his consideration. Okay, I hope you can get it clearly. So consideration is nothing but getting something in return. So promise plus consideration makes an agreement, right? So we have now learned what is a promise. An offer when accepted becomes a promise, and then consideration means getting something in return. So these two constitutes an agreement, right? And the next thing is an agreement should have a term called a consensus ad item. What do you mean by consensus ad item? That is agreeing upon same thing in the same sense. Only then it will constitute an agreement. Okay, that is both the parties in an agreement, they should agree upon the same thing in the same sense. So in our presentation we have an example. There is two parties A and B. So A has two houses, one situated in South Delhi and the other in North Delhi. So basically A has two houses, one which is there in North Delhi and one which is there in South Delhi. So he decided to sell his house, one of his house, which is located in North Delhi, to B. B is under the impression, so B got it in a wrong way. So he took that offer from A was A is going to sell his house, which is in South Delhi. But actually, A is willing to sell his house. He offered only to sell his house, which is situated in North Delhi. So B got it in the wrong sense. He thought he is going to sell his house, which is there in South Delhi. So, is there identity upon minds? Is there agreeing upon same thing in the same sense? Do they agree upon the same thing in the same sense? A is under an impression that he is going to sell his house in North Delhi, but B is under an impression that he is going to receive an house which is there in South Delhi. So there is no consensus ad item, right? So only then it constitutes an agreement. Okay, we'll now come to the basics. What is a contract? We have learned that agreement which is enforceable by law becomes a contract. So what is an agreement? Every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. What is a promise? An offer when accepted becomes a promise. Consideration, something in return. So we have now cleared what is an agreement, right? So agreement means promise and consideration. We have seen what is a promise, what is a consideration. Okay, now the next thing, a contract. An agreement which is enforceable by law becomes a contract. We have now clear with agreement. Next thing is enforceability, right? Okay, what do you mean by enforceability? Okay, in general, social agreements are not enforceable by law, right? Social agreements are not enforceable by law. Like, I'll give you a simple example. Uh, you go to your father and you tell him that if I score more than 1000 in 12th standard, you have to buy me an iPhone. And he accepts that. You have made an offer and he has accepted. There is consideration. And of course, the results came. You scored more than 1000. Now you go to your father and you're asking about the iPhone. And he says, go away. Please go away. You join a college, you earn, you buy yourself an iPhone. Now, can you claim that this is an agreement? There was a promise, there was a consideration, so this is an agreement. So I'm going to file a case against my father because he broke the agreement. Can you claim it? No. because it is a social agreement. There is no intention to create any legal relationship. In general, social agreements, moral or religious agreement doesn't have doesn't in those agreements the parties doesn't intend to bound each other legally. That is the problem. So only a business agreement has the enforceability factor in it. Okay, so from this we can safely conclude that every contract is an agreement, right? Because an agreement which is enforceable by law becomes a contract. So every contract is an agreement, but not every agreement is a contract. I hope you can get me, right? So this is about the basics of the Indian Contract Act. So we in this session we have learned what is a contract, what exactly is a contract, right? So a contract is nothing but agreement which is enforceable by law. What is an agreement? Every promise and every set of promises forming the consideration for each other. What is a promise? Offer when accepted becomes a promise. Consideration, getting something in return. So, what is enforceability? The parties to an agreement should intend to bound each other legally. Only then it can become a contract. Thank you.